You're not going to believe what happened that night. I was just doing my usual, folding laundry, sipping tea, thinking about nothing in particular, when my son Paul came to me with a look in his eyes I hadn't seen since he was a boy. "Mom," he said, "I need you to trust me." What happened next completely shifted the way I saw him and myself. Before we get into the story, tell me, what city are you watching from? I'd love to know where you're tuning in. Let's dive in together. The sound of the washing machine hummed in the background, spinning out the last of the water from Paul's gym clothes. I stood barefoot in the kitchen, folding towels on the counter, while the warm aroma of chamomile tea drifted around me. The day had been long, and the quiet of the evening felt like a reward I'd earned. That's when he walked in. My son Paul, 19 now. Tall, lean, with those deep brown eyes he got from his father. There was something different about his energy that night. He hesitated near the doorway for a second, just watching me, like he was trying to figure out the right moment to speak. "Mom," he finally said, voice lower than usual, "can I talk to you about something?" I turned toward him, sensing that whatever was on his mind wasn't casual. "Of course, honey. Everything okay?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked over and leaned against the opposite counter, his arms crossed over his chest, eyes flicking down, then back up to meet mine. There was hesitation in his voice, but also something else, something determined. "I need you to trust me. Just listen before you say anything." I felt a wave of maternal instinct rise in me, protectiveness, worry, curiosity. I nodded slowly. "All right, I'm listening." He looked at me for a long second. "You always say I'm your little boy." "But I'm not anymore, Mom. I'm not a kid. And I need you to see me differently. I need us to talk, really talk." My heart beat a little faster. His words weren't just about growing up. There was something else, something unspoken between the lines. I wasn't sure what he was getting at, but I saw the vulnerability behind his confidence, and I couldn't ignore that. "Okay," I said softly. "Then let's talk. What's on your mind?" He stepped a little closer, pulling out a chair across from me at the kitchen table. The light above cast a soft glow across his face, making his expression look even more serious. I sat across from him, still holding a folded towel in my lap like a shield. "You've been alone a long time, Mom," he began. "Since Dad passed. I've watched you give everything to me, to this house, to just surviving. But you've forgotten yourself along the way." I blinked, surprised by his honesty. "Paul." "No, let me finish," he said gently. "You've done everything for me, but I'm not a child anymore. I see things. I notice how tired you look some nights, how lonely." I looked away for a second, swallowing a sudden lump in my throat. I hadn't realized it was that obvious. "I guess I didn't think you noticed," I admitted. He reached out and touched my hand, just a gentle press, comforting but intentional. "I've noticed a lot, and I've been thinking about ways I can be there for you too. Not just as your son, but as someone you can lean on, someone you can talk to, someone you can trust." There was a long silence. His words echoed in my ears, each one cutting a little deeper, but not in a painful way. It was like he was peeling back layers I hadn't realized I was hiding behind. The way he looked at me, so earnestly, made me feel exposed and seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. "I don't want you to feel like you're carrying everything alone anymore," he said, his voice softer now. "You've always been strong, but you don't have to be all the time." I looked at him, really looked at him. There was no trace of the boy who used to chase frogs in the backyard or cry when he scraped his knee. He was a man now, a young one, yes, but thoughtful, present, mature in a way that surprised me. I reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, realizing my hands were trembling slightly. "It's hard," I said, "letting someone see the parts of me I've kept hidden, even you." "I know," he said, gently squeezing my hand, "but maybe it's time." The kettle behind me clicked off with a loud pop, breaking the moment. I stood slowly, more to collect my thoughts than to make tea. As I poured hot water over the tea bag, I glanced over my shoulder at him. "Chamomile okay for you?" I asked, my voice quieter than before. He smiled. "Yeah, that's perfect." I brought the mugs over and sat again. The tea warmed my hands, but not as much as the words still lingering between us. He looked at me over the rim of his mug. "There's something I've been wanting to do for a while now, but I didn't want to scare you." A slow chill passed through me, not of fear, but of anticipation. "What is it?" "I want to show you a different kind of connection," he said slowly. "Not just mother and son, but two people who trust each other, who support each other completely. I know it sounds different, but I think you'll understand." I stared at him, caught between confusion and something I couldn't name. His tone wasn't disrespectful, not at all. It was tender, careful, like every word had been weighed before he spoke it. "What are you saying, Paul?" He exhaled. "I'm saying I want to be there for you in a way no one has been since Dad. Not because I feel like I have to, but because I want to. Because you deserve that. And because I think maybe I need it too." The words sat between us like a secret we were both just now acknowledging. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what this meant or where we were going, but I knew that something had shifted, irrevocably. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing against the windows like fingertips. Inside, the silence wrapped around us as warm and close as the steam rising from our tea. "Okay," I finally whispered. "Then show me. I'm listening." And just like that, the conversation that started with folded towels and chamomile tea turned into something far deeper. Something that would change the way I saw him. And myself, forever. The next morning, I woke up early, though I'd barely slept. My mind had been spinning all night, replaying Paul's words, his eyes, the tone of his voice. There had been something so real about what he said, so present, and yet so unfamiliar. I wasn't sure how to name what I was feeling, but I knew I wasn't afraid of it. I sat on the edge of my bed, sunlight beginning to pour in through the thin curtains. My robe hung loosely off my shoulders, and I wrapped it tighter as if to shield myself from the thoughts that had been brewing since last night. I was 55. I'd been a mother most of my adult life. I was used to being the caretaker, the strong one. But for the first time in what felt like forever, someone had offered to take care of me. Paul hadn't meant it in the usual way. That much I understood. His words were filled with something deeper than just support or gratitude. They held a longing, a need to be seen and understood, something that mirrored my own emotions more closely than I wanted to admit. I went downstairs, drawn by the smell of coffee. He was already in the kitchen, barefoot, hair still messy from sleep, wearing a loose shirt that hung from his shoulders. He looked up and smiled softly. "Morning," he said. "Morning." My voice came out more hushed than I expected. He handed me a cup before I could even ask. He remembered how I liked it. 2 sugars, a dash of cream. The small gesture meant more than I wanted to let on. I sipped quietly and leaned against the counter, watching him as he pulled out the eggs and bread from the fridge. "I was thinking," he said casually, "maybe we could go out today. Just us. You don't get out enough. There's a spot I drive by sometimes. It's peaceful. I think you'd like it." I hesitated, then nodded. "Sure. I'd like that." He looked up and held my gaze for a moment, that same intensity in his eyes. "Really?" "Yes. I trust you." Something in his expression shifted, just slightly. A softness mixed with gratitude. He nodded once, then went back to cracking eggs into the pan. We didn't talk much during breakfast. The silence was easy, though comfortable in a way I hadn't felt in years. I watched the way he moved around the kitchen, how glum he looked. His shoulders broader now, his face more defined. The boy I raised had become a man right under my nose. And I'd been too caught up in life to really see it. Later that afternoon, we drove out past the edge of town. He had the windows cracked open, letting in the warm breeze, and a quiet playlist was humming through the speakers. I leaned my head against the seat and let myself relax. The road, the music, the comfort of his presence, it all blended into something almost surreal. When we arrived, I was surprised by how secluded the place was. A narrow trail led down to a hidden grove beside a slow-moving creek. Wildflowers dotted the path, and sunlight filtered through the trees like golden threads. It felt untouched by time. We walked in silence until we reached the edge of the water. He laid out a blanket from the trunk, then sat beside me, close but not too close. The air was warm, the sky open and wide. I couldn't remember the last time I felt so far away from everything. "I come here when I need to think," he said quietly. "When I want to feel. Still." "It's beautiful," I said. "Thank you for bringing me." He looked at me then, not just glanced, but really looked. "You've always been everything for me, Mom, but you don't let anyone be that for you." I didn't have an answer, because he was right. He leaned in just slightly. "I know this is all different. I'm not asking you for anything. I just want you to see that I'm here, that I'm not a boy anymore, that I see you as more than just a mother." His words settled deep inside me. I wanted to say I saw him too, that I felt something I didn't know how to describe, something blooming, slow and tender, but undeniable. But all I could do was nod. He reached for my hand again, and I let him. His fingers were warm against mine, strong and steady. I didn't pull away. We sat there like that for a while, watching the creek flow, and the leaves drift down like lazy feathers. I could feel the questions building between us, but neither of us pushed them just yet. The moment didn't need answers. It just needed to be felt. Eventually, he turned toward me and said, "Would you let me do something? Just something small, to show you how I feel." I felt my breath catch, but not in fear, in something closer to anticipation. "Like what?" I asked. He leaned forward just enough to brush a strand of hair from my cheek. His fingers lingered, and I didn't stop them. "Just this," he whispered. His touch was reverent, almost shy, but filled with meaning. My heart pounded, not from shock, but from the way it opened something I'd kept sealed off for too long. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. The quiet between us said everything. That day, something between us shifted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't sudden. But it was real, and it was just the beginning. That night, back at home, everything felt different. Not in a dramatic, movie-like way, but in the quiet hush that settles after something meaningful is shared. Paul had gone up to his room shortly after we returned, and I sat alone in the living room, the flicker of the TV washing soft colors across the walls. I wasn't really watching, though. My mind was far away, still in that grove by the creek, still feeling the warmth of his hand in mine. I kept replaying the way he'd looked at me. It wasn't just affection. It was awareness. Recognition. He hadn't crossed any boundaries, but he'd certainly approached them, and not with recklessness. With care. It was the care that had stayed with me. For so many years, I'd been numb to being seen. After my husband passed, I shifted into survival mode, raising Paul, managing bills, making sure there was food on the table and clean clothes in his drawer. I hadn't let myself need anything beyond that. But now I was being asked, gently, to feel again. To open a part of myself I'd locked away so long ago I barely remembered the key. I must have drifted off because the next thing I felt was a soft hand on my shoulder. "Hey," Paul's voice said, low and tender. "You fell asleep." I blinked, awake. The TV was still glowing faintly, though the volume was nearly inaudible. "Sorry," I murmured, sitting up. "Long day." He smiled down at me, the shadows of the room softening his face. "Yeah, but a good one, I think." I nodded slowly. A good one. He didn't go upstairs this time. He sat next to me on the couch. There was a pause, one of those long silences that carries weight but not discomfort. "I've been thinking about what you said," I whispered. "Back at the creek." He turned toward me, listening. "I don't know what this is. I don't have words for it. But I know how I feel. And it's not wrong. It's surprising, but it's not wrong." His face softened even more, and I saw a trace of emotion he tried to keep buried. Hope. "You don't have to explain it," he said. "I don't want to pressure you into anything. I just want you to know I'm here. However you need me." I took a slow breath. "You say that, but I think you mean more than support." He didn't deny it. "I've never felt this close to anyone in years," I admitted. "Not even friends. You make me feel safe, but also awake." He reached for my hand again, and this time I welcomed it with both of mine. His thumb traced slow circles along the back of mine, and something about the rhythm settled my nerves. "I know this is new," he said, "and complicated, but sometimes the most meaningful things come from places we never expected." The weight of his words filled the room. I looked over at him, truly seeing him, not just as my son, but as a man who had grown up under my care, yes, but who now stood beside me, not behind me. A man who wasn't asking for anything I wasn't willing to give. A man who understood me in ways others didn't even try to. He shifted slightly, just enough so our shoulders touched. It was such a small thing, but I felt it through my entire body. I leaned into it, just barely. And then, without thinking, I rested my head gently on his shoulder. He stilled for a second, just one breath, then exhaled, relaxing against me. "I like this," he said. "Me too." The light from the television flickered across the floor as we sat there, the only sound the hum of electricity and the faint creak of the couch as we adjusted to each other's nearness. It wasn't just comfort I felt. It was electricity and quiet joy and fear and release, all wrapped up in one tight knot deep in my chest. "Would it be okay if I held you?" he asked softly, like he didn't want to break the spell. I didn't answer right away. I just shifted, turned slightly toward him, and let his arms open. He wrapped them around me slowly, deliberately. Not possessive, not forceful, just embracing. I curled against his chest, and for the first time in years, I let my guard down. Completely. My fingers gently rested against his ribs. His chin came to rest on the top of my head. We sat like that for what felt like forever. Wrapped in his warmth, I remembered the girl I used to be. The woman I was before grief hardened me. And for the first time in so long, I didn't feel like a widow, or a caretaker, or a woman holding herself together out of obligation. I felt like a woman, wanted, seen, held. It was quiet, but the kind of quiet that hums with everything unsaid, but deeply understood. He didn't try to kiss me. He didn't try to do anything more than simply be there, his breath in rhythm with mine, his hands gently resting along my back. But everything had changed. And I knew, deep down, this wasn't the end of something forbidden. It was the beginning of something honest, something fragile, but beautiful. The morning sun slipped through the slats of the blinds, casting faint golden lines across the hardwood floor. I woke before Paul. The living room was still, quiet, and heavy with the kind of calm that only follows an emotional shift. I hadn't slept much, but I wasn't tired. My body felt light, yet my mind hummed with everything that had unfolded. He was still upstairs in his room. I could hear the faint creak of the floorboards above as he moved around. My hands cradled a warm mug of coffee, the familiar scent grounding me. But even the simple act of sipping it felt different now. Like my world had shifted just a few inches to the left, and everything looked unfamiliar in the best way. Last night had cracked something open in me. Something deep. Something that had been buried for years under layers of duty and silence. When Paul held me, I didn't feel ashamed. I didn't feel confused. I felt whole. For the first time in so long, I wasn't mourning the past. I wasn't stuck in survival mode. I was present. I didn't hear him come down the stairs until I felt his presence behind me. "Hey," he said, his voice still thick with sleep. I turned slightly, offering a soft smile. Morning. He came around and leaned on the counter beside me. The way he looked at me, eyes a little clearer than yesterday, but still full of something quietly intense. It made my heart skip the way it used to when I was young and unsure. "I've been thinking," he said. I set the mug down. About what? About last night. About us. He wasn't afraid to say it. Us. "I don't want to confuse you," he continued. "And I don't want to cross a line you're not ready for. But I meant everything I said. I want to be someone you can trust. Someone who sees you. Completely." I swallowed. My throat felt dry. "You already are." He stepped a little closer. His hand brushed mine gently, like he was asking permission without words. I didn't pull away. "I didn't sleep much," he admitted. I kept thinking about how natural it felt, being with you. Not just physically, emotionally. Like we've been circling around this without realizing it. I took a deep breath. "It's scary, but not in a bad way." "Yeah," he nodded. "It's like stepping into light after years in the dark." That sentence clung to me. For a long moment, we just stood there, not saying anything. The air between us was thick with possibility, tenderness, a new kind of closeness. "I don't know what this becomes," I said carefully. "And I don't want to rush into anything we don't understand. But I know what I felt in your arms last night, and I don't want to pretend it didn't happen." Paul's fingers wrapped around mine. "I don't want to pretend either, but we don't have to define it yet. Let's just keep being honest. With ourselves. With each other." I nodded. "Okay." He leaned forward and kissed the top of my head, gentle, unhurried. It was such a simple gesture, but it sent something deep through me, something warm and stirring and safe. The rest of the day passed in soft moments. We went about the usual tasks, groceries, dishes, laundry, but everything had a different energy. We spoke more softly. We glanced at each other more often. There was no need to explain anything. The unspoken understanding lingered in every look, every brush of a hand. That evening, after dinner, we sat on the porch. The sun dipped low, casting streaks of orange and purple across the sky. He was next to me, our knees touching. I could feel the warmth of him radiating through the fabric of my jeans. There was a lull in the conversation, and I turned to him. "Do you ever think," I asked, "that some connections are just meant to be different?" He looked at me, his eyes calm. "Yeah, and sometimes different is exactly what we need." I smiled. I think I'm beginning to understand that. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full, comfortable, like the pause after music where the emotion still lingers. The sky darkened, and we stayed there a while longer, just existing in that new space between us. Not mother and son, not in that moment. Just two people who had found something rare, something surprising, something honest. We didn't need to name it. We just needed to feel it. And as the first stars appeared overhead, I leaned against him again, knowing that whatever came next, we'd face it together. With trust, with gentleness, with a kind of love that didn't ask for permission to be real. It just was. And that, I realized, was enough.